All right, so get ready because today we're diving deep into the world of international trade.
Sounds good to me.
We're zeroing in on Denmark's economic relationship with the U.S.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, the numbers we dug up are interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, this relationship, it's been anything but boring, that's for sure.
Definitely not boring.
We're seeing these huge growth spurts, always exciting.
Huge.
But also some recent trends that, I don't know, make you scratch your head a little.
You know, it's interesting you say that because one of the things that really jumped out at me when we were going through this data is that Danish exports to the U.S., get this, they skyrocketed
Oh, yeah.
by 109%
Wow.
between 2019 and 2023.
Yeah.
That's incredible. That's like Denmark practically doubled its impact on the U.S. market in just a few years.
It's huge. And to see numbers like that sustained over several years, it tells you something big is happening.
Right.
And there are a few potential explanations for this that we're going to unpack.
Okay.
But what makes it even more interesting, even more so, is that 2024 seems to be telling a bit of a different story.
So you're talking about how the first 7 months of this year, Danish exports to the U.S. actually dipped
Yeah, it did.
by 27.5% compared to this time last year.
That's right.
So what's going on there? Is that just like a temporary blip, or is that a sign of some bigger changes?
Well, that is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right.
It's too early to say definitively, but it definitely warrants a closer look. A bunch of things could be at play here. You know, changes in what American consumers are buying, economic slowdowns maybe on either side, even those global supply chains, those complex systems that keep everything moving around the world, those could be shifting.
Can you talk a little bit more about those global supply chains?
Yeah.
Because I think for those of us who, don't have an economics degree, that can be a little bit of a, nebulous term.
Sure, yes.
What does that actually mean in practice?
So think about it like a global assembly line, right?
Okay.
So Denmark's making part A, the U.S. is making part B, and then they come together somewhere else to make the final product.
Got it.
Any disruptions to that intricate system, whether it's, something like a pandemic, a trade war, or even, remember that ship that got stuck in the Suez Canal a while back? Things like that can have ripple effects throughout the entire system.
Wow.
And those ripples, they impact what gets made, where it ends up, the whole 9 yards.
So how do those potential disruptions play into this recent slowdown then?
Well, one possibility is that maybe some of the raw materials or components that Denmark relies on to produce its goods have become harder to get,
Okay.
more expensive to get because of these disruptions.
Because of the disruptions, right?
Exactly. And that could impact, their ability to manufacture and export at the same levels as before.
That makes sense.
Another thing is, consumer demand in the U.S. that
Yeah.
could have shifted, right?
Sure.
A little bit of economic uncertainty can make people think twice about what they're buying.
For sure.
And that hesitation that can be reflected in those export numbers.
Okay, so before we get too far down the road of this export slowdown, I want to take a step back and talk about what exactly Denmark's been sending across the Atlantic.
Okay,
Because the top export category in 2023 might surprise you.
let's hear it.
It's not Legos.
Oh. Although I'm sure the U.S. appreciates a steady supply of those colorful bricks.
Of course, gotta have those.
The real heavy hitter in terms of Danish exports, we're talking medicinal and pharmaceutical products.
Seriously,
Yeah,
pills and potions are outperforming Lego sets.
you better believe it.
That is wild. So tell me more about this. How much are we talking here?
We are talking a massive 22.83 billion Danish kroner worth of medicinal and pharmaceutical products shipped to the U.S. in 2023 alone.
Wow.
To put that into perspective, that's roughly $3 billion U.S. dollars.
That's a lot of money.
A significant chunk of change, and it really highlights the fact that Denmark, they have a robust life sciences sector.
Yeah.
And it's making waves far beyond their borders.
That is incredible. And it's fascinating to see that kind of specialization in a specific sector, right? But I'm guessing Denmark's not a one-trick pony here, right?
Yeah.
What else are they sending our way?
You're absolutely right. While medicine is a major player, they've got other strengths too.
Okay.
Machinery, technical instruments, those high-tech specialized goods that modern economies really rely on. They've got a good handle on that stuff.
So they're sending medicine, they're sending machinery, high-tech gadgets. It's like Denmark's equipping the U.S. for, a sci-fi future over here.
Something like that.
But as with any good partnership, this trade relationship, it's a two-way street.
Absolutely. It goes both ways.
So the U.S. isn't just a major trading partner for Denmark.
No.
It's their number one.
Number one for both imports and exports.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the kind of interdependence that means their economies, they're pretty deeply intertwined.
Okay, so let's flip the script then and talk about what Denmark's getting in return from the U.S.
All right.
What are we talking here? American cars? Hollywood movies? What's fueling this side of the trade relationship?
Well, the number one import from the U.S. in 2023 might raise a few eyebrows.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Crude oil and related products.
Hold on. Crude oil.
You heard that right.
It's a surprise.
Yeah, it might seem a little counterintuitive.
Especially given Denmark's, reputation for their windmills and green energy and all that.
Right, and they are making big strides in renewable energy. Their commitment to a greener future is for sure undeniable. But here's the thing. Transitioning an entire energy grid to renewables, that takes time.
That's a process.
It is. And in the meantime, they still need to rely on those more traditional energy sources, oil, gas, that kind of thing.
So while they're building toward this cleaner future, they're kind of stuck in this in-between phase
In a way, yeah.
where they still need these traditional energy sources.
Yeah.
And a lot of that's coming from us, from the U.S.
It is, which definitely adds a layer of complexity to their green energy goals.
For sure. It's like a balancing act, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so before we jump into the whole geopolitical side of oil,
Sure.
I want to talk about the money involved in this whole trade relationship.
Yeah.
Because there's another number that is pretty mind-blowing.
Oh, there's more.
There's always more, right?
Hit me with it.
So Danish companies had, get this, 281.5 billion Danish kroner by the end of 2022 invested in the U.S.
Wow.
That's over 40 billion U.S. dollars.
That's a serious chunk of change.
It's a lot of money.
Right.
And that's more than just dipping their toes in the water.
Right.
That's diving in head first.
It's a big commitment.
What does that tell us?
It tells you they're not just doing business with the U.S., they're putting down roots,
Yeah.
building relationships.
Wow.
They're betting on a shared future. That level of investment, it suggests a belief in the long-term stability and the potential of the U.S. market.
It's a huge vote of confidence.
Huge.
It seems like there's a lot more to this relationship than meets the eye.
There's always more to uncover.
Right. We've
Yeah.
got these soaring exports.
Well-
At least they were soaring until recently.
Sure.
We've got this reliance on American oil, which is a little bit of a surprise, and then this level of investment that would make anyone blush.
It's a lot to unpack.
What else should we be considering as we try to, wrap our heads around this whole thing?
Well, we've only just scratched the surface, haven't we? We can look at these numbers all day long.
Yeah, it's easy to get lost in the billions of kroners being, thrown around.
Exactly. But to really grasp the weight of this whole trade relationship, we need to dig a little deeper, go beyond just the numbers themselves.
Because context is everything.
It really is. And that's why understanding the historical context is so important here.
So where do we even begin with Denmark and the U.S.? Has it always been this, chummy economic love fest between them?
Their story isn't exactly one of, constant BFF status. They've had their moments.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. They've had their ups and downs, just like any, long-term relationship.
Of course.
But one thing's for sure, their destinies, they've been intertwined for, get this, centuries.
Centuries. Seriously, okay, I did not realize it went back that far.
Oh, yeah.
So what kind of historical nuggets should we know about when it comes to Denmark and the U.S.?
All right, well, buckle up because we're going all the way back to the 17th century for this look.
Okay, 17th century. Got it.
You might be surprised to learn that Danish merchants were among the first Europeans to set up trading posts over in the Americas.
No way. So even before the U.S. was even a thing, these two were already, making deals. What were they trading back then?
Well, think furs, timber, those raw materials that were abundant in the New World and highly sought after back in Europe.
Oh, so classic colonial trade.
Pretty much.
Okay, so how do we go from swapping timber for furs to this multi-billion-dollar modern economic powerhouse partnership?
Well, let's just say it wasn't exactly a straight shot to the top.
Of course not. There's always a winding road.
Always, right. Over the centuries, their relationship, at least in terms of trade, it kind of ebbed and flowed. There were
Right.
periods of intense trade, followed by, periods of relative quiet. And this was all influenced by all sorts of things. World wars, economic booms and busts, you name it.
It's a roller coaster, isn't it? Just when you think you've got things figured out.
That's straight for you.
Were there any, like, major turning points, though, that you think, like, really cemented the bond between these two countries?
Absolutely. The post-World War II era, that was huge for them.
Right.
Europe was rebuilding. The U.S. emerged as this global economic powerhouse.
Right, because after World War, everyone needs a friend with a strong economy.
Exactly. And the U.S. definitely fit the bill.
They had, like, all the money at that point.
They did. And Denmark, with its strategic location and its skilled workforce, they became a really valuable trading partner.
So how did that, like, change things between them?
It really shifted the relationship away from just simple trade. It became something much more interconnected and mutually beneficial.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, you start to see the groundwork being laid for the kind of dynamic we see today.
Okay, so we've gone from 17th century furs and timber to post-war economic alliances.
We've covered some ground.
What's the next chapter in this saga?
Well, as we move into the latter half of the 20th century, you start to see this really interesting shift toward more diversified trade between the two.
Okay.
Denmark's economy had been heavily reliant on agriculture,
Yeah.
but it goes through this rapid transformation. There's this surge in manufacturing, technology, pharmaceuticals.
Ah, so this is where those high-tech gadgets and all the life-saving medicines we talked about, this is where they come in.
Bingo. Denmark really carved out this niche for themselves in these high-value sectors.
Yeah.
And the U.S., with its huge consumer market, its love of innovation, became a very natural destination for these goods.
Like they kind of like grew up together,
Yeah,
economically speaking.
in a way, yeah.
From those humble beginnings, trading raw materials to becoming this like sophisticated duo in these cutting-edge industries, it's pretty remarkable when you think about it.
It really is. It speaks to their adaptability, their resilience. They've navigated changing times, global crises, technological revolutions, and through it all, their trade relationship, it hasn't just endured, it's thrived.
Which brings us to today,
Right.
this story of like these soaring exports, strategic imports, a whole bunch of investment going back and forth.
Tons it.
But with 2024's little, economic hiccup, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, that slowdown.
It makes you wonder, is this the start of a new chapter or just a bump in the road?
It's a question worth considering, that's for sure.
It really does make you wonder.
It does,
Is this dip, is it just like a temporary blip or are we, witnessing a fundamental shift here?
Well, if history has taught us anything, it's that in the world of international trade,
Yeah.
change is the only constant, right? And that brings us to, I think, a really key takeaway here.
Because anyone can look at a spreadsheet.
Exactly. Anyone can do that, right? But understanding the why behind the numbers.
The why.
Yeah, that's where the real insights are.
Okay, so let's talk about the why then. What are the forces at play here that are influencing this relationship between these two countries? Because you mentioned earlier that this export dip, it's not happening in a vacuum.
It's not at all. It's happening against this backdrop of a global economy, frankly, that's grappling with a whole lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got inflation, potential recessions, geopolitical tensions, you name it. All of these things cast a pretty long shadow over, the global trade landscape.
So it's almost like everyone's trying to make these big business deals while riding a roller coaster.
That's a good way to put it.
Like, hold on tight. We're not sure which way it's going to go.
Exactly. And so how does a country like Denmark, relatively small, but so heavily invested in this trade relationship,
Right.
how do they navigate that? What are their options?
What do they do?
Well, one thing's for sure, when you rely so heavily on one particular trading partner,
Yeah.
diversification,
Ah, there it is.
that becomes crucial. So while the U.S., it's going to remain a very important partner for Denmark,
Right.
you're going to see them, I think, looking to forge stronger ties with other markets as well, both within Europe and further afield.
So spreading the love a little bit.
Exactly. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, as they say.
Exactly. It made sense to me. What else?
Well, then there's innovation, right? Denmark has consistently shown they have a knack for staying ahead of the curve in certain sectors. You think renewable energy,
Yeah.
life sciences, sustainable technologies.
It's true. They're always coming up with something new.
They are. If they can continue to do that, to create those products, those services that the world needs, they're going to be in a very good position to, kind of weather whatever economic storms might come their way.
Because at the end of the day, everyone wants a piece of what's new and next.
It's true. We're all drawn to that.
What's the hot new thing, right?
Exactly.
And of course, we can't forget about the energy question.
Right, which is a big one.
Denmark's dependence on U.S. oil right now.
Yeah, how they manage that reliance while also, you know, very aggressively pursuing their green energy goals.
Right, because those are ambitious goals.
They are. That's a tough balancing act, and it has global
It's
implications.
a tightrope walk, for sure.
No doubt about it.
On the one hand, got to keep the lights on today, but you also want to build that cleaner, more sustainable tomorrow.
And maybe even become a leader in renewable energy exports themselves down the line, right?
Exactly.
It's interesting stuff.
It really is, and I think you've hit the nail on the head. This whole trade relationship, it's more than just
More than just the numbers.
it's more than just the exchange of goods and services.
Way
It's
more.
about these shared challenges that we're all facing.
Yes.
Mutual opportunities that we should be looking for, and it's about, navigating a future that's frankly more complex
And more interconnected than ever before.
than ever. Yeah. So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what's the final takeaway here? What do you want our listeners to really be paying attention to?
I want them to keep a close eye on this relationship between Denmark and the U.S.
Okay.
because it really is a microcosm of the bigger picture, A reminder that in the 21st century, economic success, it hinges on adaptability.
Being able to roll with the punches.
Exactly. Innovation and this willingness to evolve alongside your partners on the global stage.
So on that note, we're going to leave everyone to ponder those possibilities because this deep dive may be over,
That's right.
but this conversation, it's far from finished.
It'll keep going.
And we'll be back next time with another deep dive into a new topic.